In December of 2003, a senior cardiologist opened a folder of clinical trial data and realized that one of the most prescribed pain drugs in America was causing heart attacks. Not occasionally. Tens of thousands of them. He had been the lead investigator on the drug's pivotal trial. He had recommended it, and the company that made it had buried the cardiovascular signal in plain sight. The drug was Vioxx. It would be pulled from shelves 9 months later. Before it was withdrawn, 80 million prescriptions had been filled in the United States. After it was withdrawn, the FDA's own senior scientist would testify under oath that between 88,000 and 139,000 Americans had suffered heart attacks or strokes because of it. 30 to 40% of them died. But here is what almost no one was told. The condition Vioxx was prescribed for, osteoarthritis of the knee, was already being treated, quietly, in clinical trials half a world away, with a tree resin that had been used for arthritis for at least 2,500 years. A resin that worked. A resin that one peer-reviewed trial after another showed could match the pain reduction of pharmaceutical drugs. A resin that could not be patented, could not be exclusively marketed, and could not generate $2.5 billion a year in sales. Welcome to Nature's Lost Vault. The archive opens in northern India, sometime around 600 BCE. A physician named Sushruta is compiling what will become one of the founding texts of medicine on the Indian subcontinent. He is writing about wounds, about surgery, about the aching joints of aging bodies. He catalogues a resin tapped from a tree that grows in the dry, mountainous regions of central India. He writes that it pacifies the inflammation of the joints. He prescribes it for what he calls sandhivata, the disease of the wind in the joints. Today we call it arthritis. The same resin appears in the Charaka Samhita, the other great Ayurvedic text from roughly the same era. Both works describe extraction methods, purification techniques, and precise dosing protocols. Persian practitioners in the Mughal courts used the same resin in ointments for the same condition. European travelers in the 17th century began sending samples back to royal apothecaries in London and Paris. The tree is in the same genus as the frankincense the wise men carried to Bethlehem. The same family. The same kind of resin tapped the same way, by cutting the bark and letting the sap weep into hardened tears. The species the wise men most likely carried grew in southern Arabia. The species the Ayurvedic physicians wrote about, the one with the clinical record, grew in India. Its name is Boswellia serrata. This is the resin that 2,500 years of traditional medicine prescribed for swollen, painful joints. And this is the resin that, in the 1990s, modern pharmaceutical science finally got around to testing in randomized controlled trials. In 2003, a research team led by Dr. Nirmal Kimatkar published a double-blind, placebo-controlled trial. 30 patients with osteoarthritis of the knee received Boswellia serrata extract for 8 weeks. The other half received placebo. After 8 weeks, the groups were crossed over. Every patient receiving the extract reported a decrease in knee pain. Every one of them. Swelling decreased. Walking distance increased. Flexion improved. When patients were switched to placebo, their symptoms returned. In 2007, Dr. Sarvesh Sontaka and a team at Government Medical College in Nagpur ran a 180-day trial. They tested Boswellia serrata directly against valdecoxib, a prescription drug from the same chemical class as Vioxx. The Boswellia group started slower. The pharmaceutical group felt relief sooner. But by the end of 6 months, the pain reduction was comparable. The difference was what happened next. 1 month after stopping treatment, the pharmaceutical patients were in pain again. The Boswellia patients were not. The mechanism was no mystery. In 1992, a German pharmacologist named Hermann Safaihi identified what the active compounds in Boswellia do inside the body. They block an enzyme called 5-lipoxygenase, which produces some of the body's primary inflammation signals. Aspirin, Ibuprofen, and Vioxx all worked on a different enzyme entirely. Boswellia bypassed them, and it worked on an inflammatory pathway the entire pharmaceutical industry had ignored. It worked. The traditional knowledge was correct. The 2,500-year-old prescription was scientifically confirmed. And then, in 1999, the FDA approved Vioxx. Vioxx was developed by Merck. It promised pain relief without the stomach bleeding that older anti-inflammatory drugs caused in older patients. By the end of the year 2000, Merck had run a trial called Vigor, comparing Vioxx to naproxen. In that trial, the Vioxx patients had a heart attack rate 5 times higher than the naproxen patients. Merck explained this away. They suggested that naproxen was somehow protective. It was not. The signal was real. The signal was buried. By 2003, doctors at Group Health Cooperative in Seattle had reviewed the same data and decided not to make Vioxx available to their 500,000 members. They saw the cardiovascular signal. They declined the drug. Merck kept selling it. By 2004, Vioxx was generating $2.5 billion a year. 80 million prescriptions had been written. And inside the FDA, a senior scientist named David Graham was conducting a study of his own. He had access to the medical records of 1.4 million patients. He compared the heart attack rates of those who had been prescribed Vioxx with those who had been prescribed other painkillers. His findings would become one of the most consequential pieces of testimony in the history of American pharmaceutical regulation. On November 18, 2004, David Graham sat down in front of the United States Senate Finance Committee. Senator Charles Grassley of Iowa was chairing the hearing. The seating was so tight that lobbyists had paid people to stand in line to hold their places. Graham read his prepared statement. He testified under oath that Vioxx had caused, conservatively, between 88,000 and 139,000 Americans to suffer heart attacks or strokes. Of those, between 30 and 40% had died. The range of dead was between 26,400 and 55,600. To put the number in front of the senators, Graham used an image. He said the casualties were the rough equivalent of 2 to 4 commercial airliners falling from the sky every single week for 5 years. He said the FDA's mishandling of Vioxx represented the single greatest drug safety catastrophe in the history of the world. He said the FDA, as currently configured, was incapable of protecting Americans from another Vioxx. Merck had pulled the drug 6 weeks earlier, on September 30th, 2004. 3 years later, on November 9th, 2007, the company agreed to pay $4.85 billion into a settlement fund for 47,000 plaintiffs who had filed claims. It remains one of the largest pharmaceutical settlements in American history. Throughout all of this, the resin Sushruta had prescribed 2,500 years earlier was sitting on shelves in Indian pharmacies. Available, unpatented, unmentioned in American medical journals. It had succeeded in the 2003 trial. It had succeeded in the 2007 trial against the very same drug class that killed tens of thousands. None of it was promoted. None of it was marketed. None of it could generate a single quarter of pharmaceutical revenue. Boswellia serrata cannot be patented because it is a plant. Its active compounds are natural molecules that no corporation owns. A bottle of standardized extract today costs under $30 and lasts a month. The patent on Vioxx generated $2.5 billion a year. This is not a coincidence of timing. This is the architecture of how American pharmaceutical development works. A drug that can be patented receives clinical trials, FDA review, sales representatives, advertising budgets, and physician education programs. A plant resin used for 2,500 years receives none of those things. The fact that Boswellia produced pain reduction comparable to a $2.5 billion drug in head-to-head trials was, in commercial terms, irrelevant. There was no one to sell it. The modern science continued anyway. A 2024 multi-center trial out of India tested a standardized Boswellia serrata extract and documented pain reduction beginning within 5 days. Other research has examined its effects on ulcerative colitis, asthma, and Crohn's disease, showing response rates comparable to standard treatments. The same enzyme pathway is involved in all of these conditions because all of them are driven by the same inflammation signals. The trees themselves grow in the dry, deciduous forests of central India. They are tapped by hand, the same way they were tapped 2,500 years ago. The resin hardens into amber-colored tears on the bark. The tears are collected, cleaned, and standardized. The traditional dose, refined by Ayurvedic practitioners over 2 millennia, is in close alignment with the dosing used in modern clinical trials. The mechanism is not new. The plant is not new. The clinical evidence is not new. The only thing that is new is the willingness of a modern medical system to look at it. The 47,000 plaintiffs in the Vioxx settlement were almost all older Americans. People with arthritis. People who had been told that their joint pain was something modern pharmaceutical science could fix. They were prescribed a drug that doubled their risk of a heart attack. Some of them died in their kitchens, some in their bedrooms, some in emergency rooms while their families were on the way. The same condition was being treated with Boswellia in clinical trials at the same time. None of those patients had heart attacks from the resin. None of them died. For 2,500 years, an Indian tree gave physicians a way to treat the inflammation of aging joints without killing the people they were trying to help. A pharmaceutical company developed a chemical alternative, sold 80 million prescriptions of it, and caused the deaths of somewhere between 26,400 and 55,600 Americans before it was pulled from the market. The resin is still available. The drug is gone. The trees still grow in the same hills they grew in when Sushruta wrote his book. A bottle of standardized Boswellia serrata extract costs under $30. The drug that replaced it cost the lives of more Americans than the entire Vietnam War. If this vault changed how you think about what gets sold and what gets ignored, subscribe to Nature's Lost Vault and hit the bell. Every like and every share helps preserve this wisdom. The next vault opens soon.